You will be shocked to discover the truth about the face and skin color of Jesus. Was Jesus really as we have come to know him? Imagine for a moment the scene as Pilate sat down to write his letter to the Roman Emperor Tiberius. In this astonishing document, he not only recounted the events of the trial, crucifixion, and resurrection of Jesus, but also gave a detailed description of the man's physical appearance, details that aren't found in any gospel. Pilate speaks of Jesus not as the fair-skinned, light-haired figure most of us are familiar with, but as a man whose true appearance would surprise you. This is not the Jesus depicted in Renaissance paintings or stained glass windows. You're moments away from discovering the hidden truth about how Jesus really looked, a truth that has been obscured for centuries. Pilate's astonishing letter to Emperor Tiberius. Pontius Pilate's letter opens with a somber tone, as if the weight of history itself pressed upon him. His words echo through time, reminding us that even the most powerful man in Judea was deeply moved by the presence of Jesus. As Pilate recounts the events leading up to the crucifixion, he pauses to reflect on the extraordinary nature of the man he met. "Majesty, the events I am about to recount may seem unbelievable to you as they did to me," Pilate begins. "I stood before a man unlike any other I had encountered in all my years of governance, a man whose appearance alone gave pause to those around him. And yet he was not of noble birth, nor did he possess the wealth or status of the elite." In this letter, Pilate reveals the internal conflict he felt as he watched the unfolding drama around Jesus. Unlike the crowds who saw a troublemaker, Pilate saw something deeper, something mysterious about the man standing before him. There was a lightness about him, an air of serenity that calmed even the most restless souls. His hair, though light in color, waved as though moved by some unseen force. His eyes, I swear to you, Majesty, seemed to shift in color, brown one moment, blue the next. No man's eye should do such a thing, and yet his did. Pilate's words paint a picture of a man who is both ordinary and extraordinary. His description of Jesus is detailed, vivid, and profoundly different from the images that have dominated Christian art for centuries. He was of medium height, neither tall nor short, yet his presence made him seem larger than life. His skin, though lighter than those around him, was not pale. It was the skin of a man who had walked long miles under the scorching sun, yet there was a softness to it. On one hand, he is a man of the law, responsible for maintaining order in a volatile province. On the other hand, he is a man, witnessing something that shakes his very core. I could not bring myself to treat him as a criminal, for he seemed nothing of the sort, Pilate writes. "My kingdom is not of this world," he said, and in that moment I knew this was no ordinary man. The true physical appearance of Jesus. What makes Pilate's letter so fascinating is not only the description of Jesus, but the way it challenges everything we think we know about his appearance. The image of Jesus as a fair-skinned, blue-eyed man is a creation of later European artists, far removed from the historical reality of Judea in the first century. Pilate, who had no reason to embellish or idealize, gives us a glimpse of the real Jesus. A man who looked more like the people of his region than the Renaissance depictions would have us believe. His light brown wavy hair, his weathered yet soft skin, his shifting eyes. These are details that bring us closer to the true face of Jesus. He did not possess the golden glow of the gods our artists so often depict, Pilate writes, nor the sharp angular features of the heroes of old. His face was softer, his features gentle, and yet there was a strength in him that I cannot describe. His gaze could pierce the very soul of a man and yet comfort him at the same time. This is a Jesus unlike any we've seen in Western art. His beauty was not in his perfection, but in his humanity. He was a man who lived among the people, who shared their struggles, and whose appearance reflected the land he came from. Pilate's letter forces us to confront the fact that the image of Jesus that has been handed down through the centuries is not based on historical fact, but on cultural and artistic preferences. I could not help but wonder, Pilate continues, why the Jewish leaders feared him so. He was not a warrior, nor did he incite the people to rebellion. He spoke of peace, of a kingdom not of this world, and yet they hated him with a passion I have rarely seen. Jesus and the Roman Empire. Pilate's letter also sheds light on the relationship between Jesus and the Roman Empire. Contrary to what many believe, Jesus was not a revolutionary in the eyes of the Romans. In fact, Pilate makes it clear that Jesus posed no threat to Roman rule. His teachings were not political, they were spiritual. When they brought him before me, accusing him of inciting rebellion, I could find no fault in him, Pilate writes. He spoke of giving to Caesar what is Caesar's and to God what is God's. He did not seek to overthrow the empire, but rather to guide people toward a higher truth, one that transcended the material world. For Pilate, this was a crucial distinction. He was used to dealing with rebels and insurgents, men who sought to challenge Roman authority through violence. But Jesus was different. His message was not one of rebellion, but of transformation of the individual's soul and its relationship with God. He was no threat to Rome, Pilate reflects. If anything, he seemed more concerned with the hypocrisy of his own people, the Pharisees, the scribes, those who outwardly displayed righteousness, but were inwardly corrupt. This realization only deepened Pilate's confusion. If Jesus posed no threat to the empire, why were the Jewish leaders so determined to see him dead? The Jewish leaders and their hatred of Jesus. The answer, according to Pilate, lies in the jealousy and fear of the religious elite. The Pharisees and scribes saw Jesus as a direct challenge to their authority. His teachings, which emphasized humility, compassion, and a deep personal relationship with God, undermined the rigid structures of power that they had built for themselves. They hated him, Pilate writes bluntly, because he exposed them. He called them out for their hypocrisy, for their focus on outward appearances, while neglecting the inward purity of the heart. "You are like whitewashed tombs," he told them, "beautiful on the outside, but full of death and decay within." I believe it was this truth, spoken so plainly, that sealed his fate. The religious leaders were not content to merely discredit Jesus. They wanted him dead, and they were willing to manipulate the crowds and pressure Pilate into carrying out their wishes. The crowds that once followed him with such devotion were easily swayed, Pilate notes with regret. It did not take long for the Pharisees to turn them against him, to incite them to cry out for his crucifixion. I tried to reason with them, to offer them a choice, Barabbas or Jesus, but they shouted for the release of the murderer and for the death of the innocent. The crucifixion and the people's demand. Pilate's recounting of the crucifixion is filled with sorrow. Despite his best efforts to save Jesus, the demands of the people and the pressure from the Jewish leaders left him with no choice. "I washed my hands of the matter," Pilate writes, "but my heart was heavy. I knew that an innocent man was about to die, and yet I was powerless to stop it." The darkness that fell over Jerusalem as they led him to the cross, it was as if the heavens themselves were mourning his death. As the crucifixion unfolded, Pilate describes the eerie silence that fell over the city. The crowds, once so full of anger and hatred, seemed to realize the gravity of what they had done. Even the priest who had called for his death appeared shaken. There was a stillness in the air, a heaviness that I cannot explain. It was as if the very earth itself was grieving. In those final moments as Jesus hung on the cross, Pilate reflects on the profound impact this man had on him and on the world around him. "I cannot explain it, Majesty," Pilate concludes, "but I feel that his death was not the end. There was something in his eyes, something that told me his story was far from over." In this astonishing recount, Pontius Pilate's letter to Emperor Tiberius reveals not just the events of Jesus' trial and crucifixion, but also a striking description of Jesus' true physical appearance. Contrary to the European depictions we know today, Pilate describes Jesus as having light brown, wavy hair, skin weathered by the sun, and eyes that seem to shift in color. Far from a political revolutionary, Jesus was seen by Pilate as a man of peace, more concerned with spiritual truths than rebellion against Rome. Yet his teachings exposed the hypocrisy of the religious elite, ultimately leading to his crucifixion, a moment that left Jerusalem and Pilate in deep sorrow. Thank you for joining us on this fascinating journey. If you found this video enlightening, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more insights into biblical stories and their hidden meanings.